New EC Chair Paul Atkins just said XRP and crypto will be his top priority. Paul Atkins and the future of crypto regulation. What if I told you that the era of crypto uncertainty in the US might finally be over, not because of a new law, not because of a court ruling, but because of one man stepping into the most powerful regulatory position in finance? That man is Paul Atkins. And if you're in crypto, if you hold XRP, if you care about blockchain innovation and regulatory clarity, this is the name you need to know. The newly appointed chairman of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission isn't just another suit with a clipboard. He's not here to drag his feet or repeat the same old regulatory nonsense we've seen for the past 5 years. No, Paul Atkins just stepped into the role and dropped a bombshell, saying, point blank, that digital assets will be his top priority. And not in some vague political way either. He's specifically mentioning XRP, he's talking about blockchain infrastructure, and he's calling for a firm foundation to support the future of digital markets. Now, let's be real for a second. This is a huge moment. For the first time in years, we've got someone at the top of the SEC who's signaling an actual course correction. After years of regulatory whiplash, after Ripple being dragged through a lawsuit that turned into a global case study in overreach, after watching innovation flee U.S. shores to jurisdictions with actual rules, Paul Atkins is stepping in and saying, enough. And you better believe the crypto markets are listening. Because this isn't just about XRP anymore. This is about the entire future of US-based blockchain projects. This is about whether the next generation of financial infrastructure will be built here or somewhere else. Let's zoom out. Why does Paul Atkins matter? Well, this guy isn't new to the game. He served as an SEC commissioner during the Bush administration from 2002 to 2008. And while that may feel like ancient history in crypto time, what's important is how he operated during his previous tenure. Atkins built a reputation as someone who pushed back against regulatory overreach. Someone who believed that capital markets thrive on clarity, not confusion. Someone who understood that innovation and investor protection are not mutually exclusive. That's a rare stance, especially at the SEC. So when someone with that kind of background says on day one that digital assets are the first item on his agenda, that's not random. That's intentional. That's strategic. And that's a message, both to crypto innovators and to legacy institutions, that the rules of engagement are about to change. And let's talk about that message. Because the words matter here. In his first formal statement as SEC chair, Atkins said that his top priority was to establish a firm foundation for digital asset markets. Not to shut them down. Not to prosecute everyone into oblivion. Not to declare everything a security and walk away. A firm foundation. That means clarity. It means predictability. It means rules that actually make sense for a new asset class. Not ones ripped from a 1946 Supreme Court case and slapped on smart contracts and cross-border liquidity protocols. And when you read between the lines, there's more. Atkins wants the SEC to stay apolitical. That's massive. Because under previous leadership, especially during the Gensler era, crypto regulation became politicized. There were clear agendas, often influenced by outside pressures and legacy industry lobbying. That's not just bad policy. It's dangerous for innovation. But Atkins is drawing a line in the sand. He's saying crypto deserves regulatory certainty, not regulatory warfare. And for a project like Ripple, one of the few US-based crypto companies that actually stuck around and fought instead of leaving, that's a vindication years in the making. Now, let's get something straight. This doesn't mean XRP is suddenly in the clear. The lawsuit isn't going to disappear overnight. But what does change is the tone. The momentum, the potential for resolution. Atkins brings something we haven't seen in a long time, willingness to engage with the crypto space constructively. And that's not just good news for XRP holders. That's good news for the entire crypto ecosystem, especially those building real infrastructure. Because here's the thing, the US is still the largest capital market in the world. The decisions made by the SEC ripple out, pun intended, into every major economy. If the US clamps down on innovation, the rest of the world notices. But if the US gets serious about modernizing its approach, the global dominoes fall the other way. It becomes easier for projects to scale, for institutions to onboard, and for adoption to accelerate. That's why this moment matters. Because for once, we're not just talking about what went wrong, we're talking about what might finally go right. So in this video, we're going deep. We're breaking down who Paul Atkins really is and why his background matters. What his appointment signals for Ripple, XRP, and ongoing litigation. How this shift at the top could influence broader crypto regulation in the US. Why this could trigger the next wave of institutional crypto adoption. And most importantly, what you, whether you're an investor, builder, or just someone paying attention, need to be watching next. This isn't just another headline. This could be the turning point we've been waiting for. So buckle up, because if Paul Atkins means what he says, then XRP isn't just getting regulatory clarity. It's about to step into the spotlight as the blueprint for compliant crypto infrastructure in the US. Let's get into it. Who is Paul Atkins? Understanding his background and approach to crypto. Let's rewind for a moment, because to understand where crypto regulation might be headed, we need to understand who's now steering the ship. Paul Atkins. The name might not have been on your radar a few weeks ago, but now, it's front and center. Because this isn't just some government technocrat dusted off from a policy institute and given a desk. This is a seasoned regulatory insider with a track record, and more importantly, a reputation that could flip the entire SEC crypto narrative on its head. Paul Atkins isn't new to the SEC. In fact, he's been here before, and when he didn't exactly toe the party line. From 2002 to 2008, Atkins served as a commissioner at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Those were transformative years in the financial world, years leading up to the 2008 financial crisis. While many regulators during that time leaned heavily into more control, more rules, and more top-down oversight, Atkins carved out a very different identity. He became known for being the dissenting voice, the counterweight, the commissioner who openly challenged the idea that more regulation always meant better markets. But let's be clear, Atkins wasn't anti-investor. He was anti-overreach. He believed in markets. He believed in transparency. But he also believed in letting innovation breathe. And that principle is exactly what's making his 2025 comeback such a seismic moment for crypto. His reappointment comes at a time when the SEC's reputation in the digital asset space is, let's be honest, in shambles. After years of mixed messages, conflicting guidance, selective enforcement, and a very public, very expensive, and very confusing battle with Ripple over XRP's legal status, the industry has been left in limbo. Is XRP a security? Is staking allowed? Are stablecoins in the crosshairs? Under Gary Gensler, there were more questions than answers, and most of those answers came through litigation, not legislation. That's where Atkins enters the picture and instantly changes the tone. Confirmed by a Senate vote in early 2025, his appointment didn't just signal a new leader, it signaled a shift in philosophy. Almost immediately, crypto insiders, institutional players, and even skeptical observers began connecting the dots. This wasn't a random choice. This was a message. And Atkins didn't waste a single headline. In his very first press conference as chair of the SEC, he dropped what might be the most significant regulatory quote of the year. Here's what he said. Digital assets, including XRP, represent a major frontier in modern finance. We have a duty to provide regulatory clarity that allows legitimate innovation to thrive while ensuring markets remain transparent and trustworthy. Just pause on that for a second. Not only did he explicitly name XRP, something previous chairs conveniently avoided, but he framed it in terms of innovation and transparency working together. That's the kind of framing that the crypto industry has been begging for. Not as an escape from regulation, but as a request for smart, predictable, growth-friendly oversight. And this is where Atkins' previous tenure becomes incredibly relevant. Back in the early 2000s, when the SEC was weighing how to modernize disclosures and handle new trading platforms, Atkins frequently pushed for streamlined rules and less bureaucratic drag. He argued that technology was evolving faster than regulators were keeping up, and that clinging to outdated playbooks would only create friction and uncertainty. Sound familiar? Fast forward to 2025, and he's now applying that same mindset to crypto. And it's no accident. Unlike the previous administration, which often painted digital assets as risky or speculative fads, Atkins is treating them like serious financial infrastructure. He's not asking, should crypto exist? He's asking, how do we make sure it's built safely, openly, and competitively without driving all the builders offshore? That's a huge shift. And it's not just talk. Since taking office, Atkins has already begun assembling a new task force inside the SEC focused exclusively on digital asset clarity, bringing in both crypto-native legal experts and former TradFi regulators who understand the need for interoperability, custody rules, and token classifications. His goal? A unified framework that doesn't treat every project like a potential threat. Think about what that means for XRP, for Ripple, for the hundreds of institutions waiting on the sidelines for a green light. If Atkins delivers even a baseline regulatory playbook, one that outlines how tokens can be sold, what makes a security, and how custody can legally work, it unlocks billions in institutional capital that's just waiting for a compliance-friendly path into the ecosystem. But beyond XRP, the implications ripple out to every corner of the crypto space. DeFi protocols that are afraid to launch in the US? They could finally get clarity. Stablecoin issuers who don't know which agency will regulate them? Atkins wants to draw clean lines. Crypto exchanges that have been hit with lawsuits instead of licenses? That may be about to change. It's a rare moment of optimism in a space that's grown used to dodging regulatory landmines. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Can Atkins actually deliver? Here's what's encouraging. Atkins isn't just a former commissioner. He's a private sector veteran. After leaving the SEC, he went on to advise major financial institutions, fintech firms, and blockchain companies, often helping them navigate regulatory risk. That gives him a rare hybrid perspective. He knows how government works, but he also understands how slow, reactive, and outdated it can be. More importantly, he knows how it looks from the other side, when a company tries to comply and there are no clear rules. That's why so many in the crypto space are cautiously optimistic. Because this time, we're not seeing a regulator who's learning on the job. We're seeing someone who's already watched the system fail and now has a chance to fix it. And don't underestimate the timing. Atkins steps in just as the global race for crypto leadership is heating up. The EU has MiCA. Asia is rolling out digital asset frameworks. The UAE, Singapore, and Hong Kong are pulling in projects at record pace. The US can't afford to keep dragging its feet. Atkins knows that. And if his early statements are any indication, he's prepared to move fast, especially where XRP and payment-focused tokens are concerned. So let's recap why Paul Atkins matters. He's been inside the SEC before and pushed for modernization. He believes in markets and innovation, not micromanagement. He's already prioritizing crypto, explicitly naming XRP in his first speech. He's forming a digital asset task force to bring real clarity. And he understands that without regulatory reform, the US will fall behind globally. This isn't just a leadership change, it's a complete philosophical reset at the most powerful financial regulator in the world. If you hold XRP, if you build in crypto, or if you simply want to see the US embrace the future of finance instead of fighting it, Paul Atkins is the person to watch. And based on what we've seen so far, he's just getting started. So what does Paul Atkins' appointment actually mean for Ripple, for XRP, and for the future of crypto regulation in the United States? To answer that, we've got to look back, because XRP's regulatory battle didn't start yesterday. It started with a bang in December 2020, when the SEC blindsided the market with a lawsuit that sent shockwaves across the entire digital asset space. They accused Ripple Labs of conducting an unregistered securities offering through XRP sales, essentially branding one of the most established digital assets on the planet a security. Not just future sales, all sales. Past, present, future. It was a blanket enforcement move that caught even crypto veterans off guard. And for nearly 5 years, Ripple and XRP holders have been trapped in regulatory limbo. Institutional adoption stalled. US exchanges delisted XRP. Retail confidence wavered. Meanwhile, global competitors in jurisdictions like the UAE and Europe kept building, launching, integrating. The US? Paralyzed. All because the rules weren't clear. And the SEC wasn't interested in making them clear. Instead, they were happy to regulate by lawsuit, dragging Ripple through courtrooms while dodging calls for comprehensive crypto policy. That's the environment Atkins is stepping into, and he knows it. Where Gary Gensler came in swinging, treating crypto as a threat that needed to be boxed in, Paul Atkins is walking in with a different mindset entirely. And it's not just different, it's dangerous for the anti-crypto status quo. Because Paul Atkins isn't trying to fight crypto. He's trying to understand it, enable it, regulate it without choking it out. And that shift in tone isn't just symbolic. It could completely flip the script on XRP's future in the United States. Under Gensler, the message was loud and clear. Everything is a security unless we say otherwise. No framework, no clarity, no meaningful engagement, just lawsuits and speeches. That kind of regulatory posture didn't just hurt Ripple, it chilled innovation across the board. But under Atkins, the pendulum is swinging back, toward reason, toward dialogue, and most importantly, toward regulatory clarity. So let's talk about what this means specifically for XRP. First, it opens the door to a settlement. For years, Ripple has made it clear, they're not asking to operate in a lawless gray zone. They want clarity. They've pushed for a clear designation for XRP, whether that's as a commodity, a currency, or something in between. And with Atkins now in the driver's seat, the SEC may finally have the internal leadership willing to end the legal war and start building a framework. This isn't wishful thinking, it's already in motion. Just weeks after Atkins took over, rumors began circulating about quiet back-channel negotiations between SEC legal teams and Ripple's counsel. For the first time, there's real talk of a structured resolution that could give XRP a defined legal status, one that doesn't involve dragging out the case for another 5 years. Why does that matter? Because clarity changes everything. If XRP is finally declared not to be a security, or if its future sales are categorized under a new crypto-specific classification that opens the floodgates, exchanges can relist without fear. Institutions can offer XRP-based products. Banks can settle with XRP through RippleNet without fearing legal backlash. It becomes more than a token, it becomes infrastructure. And let's be honest, Ripple has already been acting like a key player in global payments infrastructure for years. They've built corridors in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, Latin America. They've onboarded hundreds of financial institutions. The only thing holding them back in the US? The lawsuit. Atkins knows this. And based on his track record, he's unlikely to let it continue dragging on, especially not if he wants the US to remain competitive in blockchain innovation. But it goes deeper than just XRP. Because Atkins isn't approaching this from a Ripple exception perspective. He's pushing for a comprehensive rethinking of how digital assets are treated. In his first few weeks, he's already hinted at distinguishing between tokens with genuine utility and those that are clearly investment contracts. And that distinction? It's the beating heart of the entire XRP legal debate. If the SEC under Atkins moves toward a function-first framework, looking at what a token actually does, not just how it was sold, it's game over for the blanket, everything is a security mentality. XRP, with its clear use case in cross-border payments, would likely be one of the first beneficiaries of that shift. That's why XRP bulls are buzzing right now. This isn't just about one lawsuit. It's about changing the rules of the game. Now let's zoom out. What does this shift mean for the broader market? Because XRP isn't the only asset that's been suffocating under unclear regulation. Ethereum has faced questions. Stablecoins have been in limbo. DeFi protocols have pulled out of the US altogether. The damage from regulatory uncertainty is measurable: billions in capital, thousands of jobs, and countless projects either shelved or shipped offshore. Atkins knows this too. And his pro-crypto stance isn't about waving pom-poms for digital assets. It's about risk management and growth enablement. He understands that without a modern framework, the US won't just lose its lead in crypto, it'll lose the entire next wave of financial innovation. So here's what could be coming under Atkins. A token classification framework that distinguishes utility tokens, payment tokens, and investment contracts. A pathway for token sales that avoids the securities trap, possibly modeled after safe harbor proposals or EU-style guidance. New standards for custody, staking, and stablecoins, clear enough for banks and TradFi institutions to engage legally and confidently. And most importantly for XRP holders, a clear, public position on XRP's status, setting precedent for how similar tokens will be treated going forward. This isn't a pipe dream. It's the direction things are headed. And XRP may very well be the first digital asset to benefit. Let's not forget, despite everything XRP has been through, delistings, lawsuits, FUD, it's still a top 10 token by market cap. It's still used by banks. It's still moving real value. If Atkins gives the green light, XRP doesn't have to climb back from zero. It's already positioned to scale. So here's the bottom line. Paul Atkins brings a new tone, a new vision, a new chance. He's not treating crypto as a problem. He's treating it as a tool, a powerful one that, if regulated right, could supercharge financial inclusion, improve payment infrastructure, and inject real competition into legacy banking rails. For XRP holders, this could be the inflection point you've been waiting for. Because if the SEC under Atkins shifts its stance, even slightly, from enforcement to engagement, XRP could go from fighting for survival to becoming the first token officially cleared for institutional primetime in the US. And if that happens, the market won't just react, it'll explode. The ripple effect, how Atkins' focus on crypto will impact the broader market. Paul Atkins stepping in as SEC chair isn't just a win for XRP holders. It's a seismic shift that could flip the trajectory of the entire crypto market. Let's get one thing straight. When the head of the most powerful financial regulator in the US says his top priority is crypto, the market listens. But what really matters is how he's choosing to approach it. In his very first public address after taking the SEC reins, Atkins didn't waste any time. He laid out a vision that's not about punishment or fear, it's about balance. His words were precise. We're not here to crush innovation. We're here to foster it, responsibly. That one sentence might be the most bullish thing we've heard from Washington in years. Because for far too long, the crypto industry has operated in a regulatory fog. Projects didn't know whether they were building the next big thing or the next lawsuit. Exchanges walked on eggshells. Founders had to choose between innovating in the US or fleeing to friendlier jurisdictions like Switzerland, Singapore, or Dubai. But now, there's finally a path forward. And it starts at the top. Atkins' philosophy is rooted in regulatory clarity, not regulatory chaos. He wants to create predictable, forward-looking guidelines that innovators can actually build around. That's the kind of environment where projects don't just survive, they thrive. And we're not just talking about XRP here. We're talking Ethereum, Chainlink, Polkadot, Solana, Avalanche, Cosmos. Every serious project that's been operating in the shadows of uncertainty suddenly has a reason to step into the light. Let's break down exactly how Atkins' leadership could reshape the landscape, starting with the altcoin market. 1. Ethereum and the smart contract sector. Ethereum's been in a regulatory gray zone for years. First, the SEC said it wasn't a security, then later comments cast doubt. Gensler never made it clear. But under Atkins, we could see a definitive ruling that settles Ethereum's status once and for all. And let's be real, if Ethereum gets clarity, it sets a domino effect across the entire smart contract ecosystem. Layer 2s like Arbitrum and Optimism, or competitors like Avalanche, Near, and Cardano, these projects need regulatory certainty if they're going to land institutional capital or government partnerships. With Atkins signaling a functional use approach to classification, Ethereum could finally shed the regulatory baggage. That clears the path for real integration into traditional finance. Think Ethereum-backed ETFs, tokenized securities, decentralized identity frameworks, and more. 2. Chainlink, Polkadot, and the middleware layer. Projects like Chainlink and Polkadot don't get enough mainstream credit, but they're building the connective tissue of Web3. Chainlink's Oracle network underpins DeFi, gaming, insurance, and even real-world asset tokenization. Polkadot is building cross-chain infrastructure that lets blockchains talk to each other securely. But guess what? If the SEC sees them as unregistered securities, the entire ecosystem could stall. Atkins' framework could change that overnight. By recognizing the technological role these networks play, not just their fundraising history, these projects could be treated as infrastructure providers, not investment schemes. That unlocks new developer energy, institutional partnerships, and public sector use cases that were previously off-limits due to regulatory fear. 3. DeFi, the final frontier. Let's talk DeFi. Under Gensler, decentralized finance was treated like the Wild West, dangerous, untrustworthy, and in need of a sheriff. But the truth is, DeFi isn't going away. It's evolving. And with proper regulation, it could outcompete traditional finance on transparency, efficiency, and accessibility. Atkins isn't blind to this. His public comments suggest a far more nuanced view of decentralized platforms. He understands that not every automated liquidity pool or yield vault is a security. He's reportedly considering a regulatory sandbox model for DeFi protocols, where innovation can flourish under transparent, agreed-upon conditions before being subject to broader enforcement. Think about what that means. Compound, Aave, Curve, these protocols could operate legally in the US, partner with fintech firms, even onboard banks and credit unions looking for on-chain yield exposure. This isn't just bullish. It's revolutionary. For stablecoins, from risk to recognition. If there's one area Atkins is laser-focused on, it's stablecoins. Because stablecoins are the bridge between crypto and real-world money. And they've exploded in volume, over $150 billion in circulation, used for everything from DeFi to remittances. But until now, US regulators have treated them like a problem waiting to happen. No clear rules. No clear oversight. Just vague threats and behind-the-scenes turf wars. That's changing. Atkins has reportedly initiated talks with the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and key payment companies to build a cohesive, stablecoin framework that protects consumers without killing innovation. This could mean licensing paths for stablecoin issuers like Circle and Paxos, auditing and transparency standards, interoperability requirements, recognition of stablecoins as legitimate payment instruments. If that happens, US banks could issue their own stablecoins. Payment apps could integrate them natively, and DeFi protocols could finally operate without being labeled shadow banks. It's the kind of clarity the market's been begging for, and under Atkins, it's finally within reach. 5. Institutional capital floodgates open. Here's the real kicker. Once there's regulatory clarity, once the SEC under Atkins lays out clear rules of the road, the floodgates open. And I'm not talking about retail hype or Twitter sentiment. I'm talking BlackRock, Fidelity, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. These institutions have been building in silence. Watching. Waiting. Preparing. But they haven't gone all in because they don't want the risk of investing in an asset the SEC might sue out of existence tomorrow. With Atkins reshaping the landscape, that risk gets drastically reduced. We're already seeing signs. Bitcoin ETFs are on the table again. Tokenized treasury products are being trialed by TradFi players. Major banks are building custody arms for crypto, on the down low, waiting for green lights. If Atkins provides that green light, expect institutional capital to surge into every corner of the market, not just Bitcoin and Ethereum, but XRP, DeFi, gaming, oracles, layer 2s, you name it. It won't be a trickle. It'll be a tidal wave. 6. Market confidence returns. Last but not least, investor confidence. The average retail investor has been burned. Rug pulls, scams, lawsuits, FTX. It's taken a toll. But clarity breeds confidence. If Atkins creates a regulatory structure that treats good actors fairly and weeds out the frauds, then trust can finally be rebuilt. Projects will no longer need to lawyer up just to launch a token. Exchanges won't have to delist assets out of fear. And the US can once again be seen as a leader, not a laggard, in the digital asset revolution. Final thoughts on the ripple effect. Paul Atkins isn't just the new SEC chair. He's the potential catalyst for the next bull run, not based on hype, but on real infrastructure, clear rules, and deep institutional interest. His pro-crypto stance isn't a niche position, it's a recognition of where the future of finance is heading. And for the first time in years, it looks like the United States might actually want to lead that future instead of fighting it. So whether you hold XRP each, Link, DOT, or you're just watching from the sidelines, pay attention. Because this isn't just a regulatory shift. It's a signal. The next phase of crypto isn't going to be defined by courtroom battles and compliance chaos. It's going to be shaped by clarity, cooperation, and capital. And it all starts with Paul Atkins. The political implications, what's driving the shift in SEC leadership? Why Paul Atkins? And why is his appointment making shockwaves not just in crypto circles, but across Wall Street, Capitol Hill, and Silicon Valley? To answer that, we need to zoom out. Because this isn't just about the SEC. This is about a strategic recalibration in U.S. policy, one that could redefine America's place in the global digital economy. And yes, it starts with crypto, but it goes much deeper. Let's unpack the political playbook driving this shift. Because once you see the big picture, you'll realize Atkins' rise to the top of the SEC was no accident. It was a calculated move in a much larger chess game. The Trump doctrine: innovation first, bureaucracy second. Let's be real, like him or not, Donald Trump's return to the political stage has reignited a major debate over how the U.S. should handle emerging tech. Back in his first term, Trump was all about cutting red tape, slashing bureaucracy, and letting entrepreneurs lead. That same doctrine is back. Only this time, it's laser-focused on blockchain, crypto, and the battle for tech supremacy. Because while the US has spent the last few years fumbling over how to regulate crypto, China launched a CBDC. Dubai built a global crypto hub. Europe passed MiCA to attract institutional capital. Meanwhile, the US? Lawsuits. Confusion. Fears. Regulatory warfare. And behind closed doors, it's been a growing source of frustration, especially among pro-business Republicans who see blockchain as the future of finance, supply chains, digital identity, and national security. That's the backdrop for Atkins' appointment. He's not just a financial expert, he's a political signal. A message to both markets and Washington that the US is done sitting on the sidelines. That innovation is back on the agenda. And that crypto isn't going to be a scapegoat anymore. It's going to be a pillar of American economic policy. Atkins isn't new to this, he's true to this. Let's talk about the man himself. Paul Atkins isn't some newcomer to the financial world. He served on the SEC under George W. Bush. He's been a senior advisor to multiple administrations. He's authored white papers on smart regulation and market reform. And for years, he's been vocal about the dangers of over-regulating emerging technologies. In fact, long before crypto was even a household word, Atkins was already advocating for principle-based frameworks, not the kind of hyper-prescriptive rulebooks that end up stifling progress. He's a known critic of the regulation by enforcement model. You know, the one the SEC used under Gensler to drop lawsuits like grenades without ever setting clear rules. That model created chaos, uncertainty, and it scared off both innovators and investors. Atkins? He's here to flip that model on its head. He's calling for clarity, for consultation with the industry, for a rules-based framework that works with innovation, not against it. And here's the kicker, he's getting bipartisan support. Because even many Democrats, especially in tech-heavy states like California and New York, are starting to realize that driving innovation offshore isn't good politics. Not when jobs, tax revenues, and geopolitical influence are on the line. Atkins represents a rare thing in Washington right now, a consensus builder with real-world financial expertise and a roadmap to modernize regulation. And that brings us to the deeper layer. Ripple versus SEC, the wake-up call. Let's not sugarcoat it. The SEC's lawsuit against Ripple was a turning point. Not just for XRP holders, but for Congress, for regulators, for anyone watching from the sidelines who wondered, wait, how is this still happening in 2025? What started as a targeted enforcement action against Ripple turned into a multi-year embarrassment for the SEC. Key documents exposed inconsistencies in how tokens were classified. Judges questioned the SEC's logic in real time. Thousands of retail investors were left in limbo. International regulators started mocking the US for falling behind. And behind the scenes? Lawmakers were taking notes. Senators like Cynthia Lummis, Representative Tom Emmer, and even moderate Democrats began speaking out. The message was clear: we need leadership at the SEC that understands crypto, not fights it. Paul Atkins was on their radar. So when the opportunity came, when the political winds shifted back in Trump's favor, and reformers inside the SEC were pushing for change, Atkins became the obvious choice. Not just because of his credentials, but because of what he represents. A break from the past, a bridge to the future, and a serious chance to repair the SEC's damaged credibility in the crypto space. The institutional pressure is mounting. Let's talk about the other side of the aisle, Wall Street. For all the anti-crypto rhetoric we've seen publicly, the reality behind closed doors is very different. Major financial institutions are deep in the trenches building crypto infrastructure. JP Morgan's Onyx, BlackRock's digital asset strategies, Fidelity's crypto custody, Goldman's blockchain trading pilots. They've been gearing up for this moment, but they've been hesitant to go all in because of regulatory risk. Gary Gensler's reign left them walking a tightrope. Now, with Atkins, the calculus has changed. Suddenly, these firms are making calls. They're dusting off shelved proposals. They're preparing for a world where tokenization of real-world assets isn't just legal, it's encouraged. Atkins' arrival isn't just soothing the crypto natives. It's emboldening the giants. That means more political pressure, more lobbying, more urgency to fast-track laws and guidelines that legitimize this space once and for all. You think the crypto lobby was active before? It's about to go into overdrive. Global politics. America can't afford to lose the digital race. Here's the elephant in the room. Crypto isn't just a financial issue anymore. It's a geopolitical one. China is piloting its digital yuan in 200-plus scenarios across multiple provinces. Europe is finalizing its digital euro roadmap. BRICS nations are exploring blockchain for cross-border settlements and sanctions resistance. Meanwhile, the US has been caught flat-footed, thanks largely to regulatory infighting. But Atkins is stepping in with a very clear message. America must lead in blockchain innovation, not lag behind. This isn't just rhetoric. It's national strategy. With Atkins leading the SEC, the US is now signaling that it's back in the race. That it intends to be the home of the next Google of blockchain, the next Amazon of DeFi, the next PayPal of tokenized payments. And politically, that message plays well. Because whether you're on the right or left, nobody wants China writing the rules of the digital economy. This is about more than coins and tokens. It's about economic dominance, about protecting civil liberties in a programmable money future, about preserving the dollar's role in a rapidly digitizing world. Atkins understands that, and he's building the regulatory scaffolding to support it. The political machine has shifted gears. The appointment of Paul Atkins wasn't just a reshuffling of titles. It was a pivot, driven by political necessity, economic urgency, and strategic foresight. It tells us that crypto is no longer an afterthought in Washington. It's a frontline issue. A matter of policy, power, and national competitiveness. Whether you're holding XRP, building a DeFi protocol, or just observing the space, this is your moment of clarity. The rules are changing. The power players are changing. And the future of crypto in America might finally have a fighting chance. What happens next? The road ahead for XRP and the crypto market. So now that Paul Atkins has taken the reins at the SEC, here's the million-dollar question. What happens next? Because make no mistake, the future of XRP and quite possibly the broader trajectory of the entire crypto market hinges on what moves he makes in these next few months. And right now, we're standing at a crossroad. Paul Atkins represents a once-in-a-cycle opportunity to break free from the regulatory gridlock that's held back crypto for years. If he succeeds, XRP won't just bounce back. It could lead the charge into a new age of enterprise-grade, globally integrated digital finance. And the rest of the crypto market? It won't just follow, it'll surge. This is your moment. Don't miss it. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve, hit that subscribe button right now. Be Crypto Smart is where we connect the dots before they go mainstream. We're just getting started. The future of crypto regulation under Paul Atkins. Paul Atkins' appointment as SEC chair signals a new era for crypto regulation in the U.S. With a clear focus on ensuring fair and balanced rules, Atkins aims to create a regulatory environment that fosters innovation without compromising investor protection. For XRP, this could mean a brighter future, with the ongoing legal battle with the SEC potentially reaching a fair resolution. But it's not just about XRP. The broader crypto market stands to benefit from the clarity Atkins promises to bring. As we move forward, all eyes will be on the SEC to see whether Paul Atkins can live up to the promise of a more transparent, supportive, and innovative regulatory framework. What do you think? Will Paul Atkins be the game changer that crypto has been waiting for? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Be Crypto Smart for the latest updates.